Hey, it's Jordan. We're here in Seattle, and we're at All Home, which is one of the biggest organizations fighting homelessness here, which has honestly become an epidemic the more you read on what's going on in Seattle and King County and the state of Washington, which is really, when I think about Washington and Seattle, you think fairly progressive, but homelessness, affordable housing, it's kind of what Bernie's talking about. A lot of progressive candidates are talking about gentrification. Seattle's kind of a nucleus for all of these things. And I'm here with Kira Zylstra. Did I butcher it?
No, you got it.
Got it. Yeah. Kira Zylstra, and you're the director of All Home. Tell people, what does All Home do? We know that it kind of feeds into kind of working with various entities to try and alleviate the homelessness issue.
Yes, we are what's called the Continuum of Care lead for Seattle King County. So we're responsible for the federal requirements of what communities need to do to address homelessness in each region. And really in that role, what that means is that we're tasked with coordinating with all the partners in our region, whether faith-based organizations, service providers, public funders, private funders, and most importantly, people with lived experience of homelessness, those that are experts in their own lives and know what it takes to really stabilize in housing again for themselves. And so we try to bring all those folks together to really create a coordinated response and make sure that we are all moving in the same direction towards shared goals.
And you know, I know you grew up in Michigan, but Seattle was kind of similar to San Francisco, like kind of had a counterculture thing going on, very progressive, liberal, and frankly, it's been a lot of the tech boom, Amazon, Microsoft, other companies have brought in a lot of high salary workers, but those high salary workers are bringing in skyrocketing rent increases, housing increases, basically gentrification, I would say, run amok. So has that really, the timeline has been economic development, as they call it, really skyrocketing costs, correct?
Yeah, I would say it's not just about big businesses, but just simply economic growth. Since the economic downturn in the early 2000s, we have seen this region bounce back from that, bounce back pretty quickly, and that has put a lot of pressure on our housing market. And we're one of the communities with the fastest rising rents of any community across the country. And other communities in similar positions with very rapidly rising rents are seeing this crisis of affordable housing and the lack of affordable housing. So that has put pressure on the market in a way that folks that are living on the margin, living paycheck to paycheck, can no longer afford the housing that they're in. We have half the units available in the community that we once did to people with the lowest incomes.
And I assume rent control isn't really a thing.
It is not a thing. It was just passed in the state of Oregon.
Yes.
So there is definitely work around the country happening related to trying to control rents or regulate them in ways to ensure livability for everybody. There is a ban in Washington state on rent control. So to change that here in our region would take state level legislation.
And could you explain, because I didn't know this until today, if Washington state is one of the most progressive culturally, there's no income tax, no capital gains tax, or I believe there's no income tax, no capital gains tax, very regressive. Has it always been that way? Because the income tax or lack thereof, I think is part of all of this.
Retail giant Amazon says it's questioning its future in Seattle. I don't blame it, because the city council passed a new tax. $275 per worker for the largest employers in the city. Now, this revenue is all set to help the city's homeless problem.
I think they're forgetting that these free market capitalist companies that have made an incredible fortunes in the American free enterprise system are in Washington. For one of the reasons is they're in Washington is that Washington has no state income tax.
Yeah, certainly the legislative impacts of the state are trickling down to how we address the crisis at the local level. I haven't lived in Washington state my entire life, so I don't know how this has changed over the last many decades, but I've lived here for nearly 20 years, and I think there is a huge need for really looking at our tax system here in the state and how that's impacting people at the lowest incomes and with the greatest needs. But our local community is really invested in this issue. And so what I have seen is a lot of investment and commitment from our local public funders, private foundations and partners that are really invested in this issue. So it's not a lack of commitment and compassion from our community, but there's a lot of external pressures and systemic issues that are perpetuating this crisis.
So I don't want to get you in trouble, but I'm going to say it. So you have Amazon. I don't default to people who work at Amazon.
Yep.
You got software engineers, a lot of smart people, people who worked hard. So it's not pox on Amazon, but Amazon's a $1 trillion company. So there was a city council effort to put an employer's tax, not just on Amazon, but companies, to pay, per worker. You would know better than me, but I think it was like, was it $100 per worker? Or?
I can't remember where it landed. There was a few different iterations.
But basically, very like a modest tax on employers like Amazon to go to homelessness. It wasn't going to alleviate all homelessness, but something. I think Amazon would have been paid $24 million, I believe, was the estimate. That's a drop in the bucket for a company like Amazon. So what is the role of corporations in this? Because all over the country, you have wealthy people that do philanthropy, but a lot of people look at that, well, nice of you to do philanthropy, but you're causing the gentrification. So what are your thoughts? I'm not asking for you to criticize Amazon, but Amazon seems to be the real elephant here in the room in Seattle and King County.
Yeah, I think too often we actually do make it about one company or one business. That kind of narrows our mindset into how that one company can make the difference. And truly this is a regional crisis, as you've called out. It's a statewide crisis. And there needs to be local, state, federal, and private sector response. We're all responsible, and we all need to respond to the crisis in our community. I think the most important thing to recognize is that we have a shortage of resources. In one given night, when we do the annual point-in-time count, we've estimated that about 12,000 people are experiencing homelessness just on one given night, sheltered and unsheltered. But over the course of a year, 3 times that many individuals are falling into homelessness. And we do not have the resources to support people in connecting with permanent housing quickly at that scale and at that rate. So I think the most important piece about the debate about the head tax is embracing and understanding the fact that this is not just a Seattle crisis, this is a regional crisis, and one that we do need resources to address.
And could you explain for people, how do you guys get to that number? It's like one night of the year, your organization has 1,000 volunteers that go out. So how do you figure 12,000?
Yeah, so the point-in-time count is not a perfect estimation. There's no absolutely perfect way of identifying every single person that experiences homelessness on a given night. And some people try very hard not to be counted and are fearful of what that might do. But what we do is our best estimation of the number of people experiencing homelessness on that night, again, sheltered and unsheltered. So between the hours of 2 a.m. and 5 a.m. on that night, we are sending volunteers throughout the entire county. This is a full county enumeration, and they're just doing an observational count of the number of people that they see sleeping outside in tents or encampments, appearing to be sleeping in vehicles or RVs, and they're just tallying those. And then we are also doing a survey to follow up to learn more about people experiencing homelessness and ask questions to better understand the characteristics and needs and what we can do to better respond and make sure that our services are actually relevant to their needs. But what this doesn't do is capture people who are living couch surfing, living day to day in a different place because they have no stable place to be at night. And again, there's no way of ensuring that we've been able to identify every person when out on the street. So we use the point-in-time count to help understand trends over time, but we have to use all the sources of data available to us, which include the Homeless Management Information System, which is the database where we're tracking services provided and received throughout the course of a year, and especially just talking to individuals experiencing homelessness and really understanding by engaging with people what it is their needs are and how the system is or is not addressing that accurately right now.
So I want to ask you, because I think people have a viewpoint of homelessness, at least in New York City, where I'm from, like drunks and slobs and, they just society's miscreants. But I remember I went to cover an outdoor, they call it houseless tent village, because they don't like using the phrase homeless, because home is where the heart is, so you don't want to be like, you're homeless. So they say houseless. But anyway, I was surprised because when I went there was nobody there. People were at work. So I wanted to ask you, the people on the streets here, I would assume, are a lot of people who work part-time, full-time, people in school. Can you kind of talk about the cross-section?
Yeah, absolutely. From the survey results that we get from the point-in-time count, about 40% of those that respond to that survey are currently working. They're just working in jobs that do not pay at the level that will allow them to afford rent in this region, afford housing in this region generally. There's families experiencing homelessness, veterans experiencing homelessness, and that there is not one image or face that describes this crisis.
Out front tonight, chaos at the White House. President Trump's deputy chief of staff, his communications director, is
just because of their connection to President Trump. And I know you've been saying...
We learned recently that Donald Trump threatened to sue his former schools if...
Tired of hearing about Trump 24/7? Become a member at statuscool.com for only $10 a month. Click the notification. With your help, we can start the media revolution.
And before Bernie went on stage, I spoke with his supporters online here, and you really get that feeling from